There is a steady, somewhat mellifluous dance between push and pull dynamics, between trying to find certain dynamics among other people when starting to try to develop foundational energy in a business sense, so that it sometimes is necessary to find people that will dance with you. People absolutely need to be able to accept this dance, and they do not always have the ability to just jump in with you, and they will not always just jump in with you. And so even though if you have ambitions, sometimes there are external elements that don't necessarily align with what it is that you think you should be doing to try to get through to the next element or level or aspect of focus that you're trying to get through while you're focusing on certain tasks that you're moving towards, and you just need to continue to make progress. And there's not always someone at the other end of where you're going or what you're thinking about or how you want to proceed. So you need to find this dance, you need to find this back and forth reciprocation that sometimes is a little bit of a difficult task in of itself, because even if you have value to offer people, whether or not it's money or additional reciprocation value, reciprocation value, and what it comes down to is equity as well, which goes a bit further than money just does in the first place. But sometimes just to get an available ear to begin with is a little bit more difficult than it even seems for people who care enough to want to be able to take that equity, and even listen to what the value is to begin with, and even hear the numbers, and even be able to listen as far enough to be able to get to the numbers, to be able to actually then to be able to activate and be able to participate. It takes a little bit more work than it necessarily seems like it might be should. So this is part of the trial and error process for continuing to try to unfold the process and the pipelines of moving forward to develop people who are pipelines and processes that have to do with partnerships to be able to make powered by brands and processes to unfold the demand and supply as elements of the market, to be able to connect with a stint-like process, connecting first to the demand side of the marketplaces, and then secondly, connecting to the supply side. So these brokers are somewhat in place, and they're somewhat out there, and they exist because these markets exist all over the world. But just trying to speak to people in a cold fashion, it sometimes ends up speaking in a backwards language to you, and you don't get the answers that you necessarily think will be reciprocated. It's not necessarily always a dance, and sometimes you have to ask a lot of people to dance and get a lot of refusals just to have this dance, just to be able to make this fluid, mellifluous process, be able to develop pipelines of fluidity. And so what is sort of a next plan, or what we're conceivably conceptualizing to be able to try to amplify conceivable possibility to be able to move in the direction of opening some more pipelines and be able to try to follow through, or do some of the things that we've been talking about doing in the podcast for a long time now, or a long while now, in terms of developing more consolidation and more consolidated services and synchronous mindsets with other existing outside external resources and cultures, and developing crossover existing services that are existing and somewhat reciprocal with what we're talking about doing in this podcast, but also with what I'm trying to focus on, which is virtual assistants. And also virtual assistants, but also like being able to get assistance and helping with different tasks, not just in a media sense or social media, or developing a global network for developing global network of global media that has to do with developing and promoting content that has to do with more so promoting fostering of animals to bring out the magic in people and bring out the magic in animals, to make it so all animals in the animal shelters stop dying, unnecessarily having to die, because people are willing to foster them all the time, because there's ample demand, because plenty of content is helping amplify the magic and the connection and the connectivity between humans and animals, and how they are also able to provide more value to us than we're able to provide to them. So in the meantime, trying to connect with conceivably the Philippines in like the next upcoming couple weeks is like an ambitious, peculiar projection conceptualization, because ultimately that location and part of town in this world, in this planet Earth, that part of town already has certain connections for developing certain assistance that is related and relative, and a relationship that has to do with reciprocation and a development of already ingrained processes where certain assistants are in place to be able to access certain assistance and have certain items to be able to accomplish them, hopefully by having assistance from like a virtual and a personal, hopefully physical presence type of sense, whereby if I somehow I'm able to get a job in the Philippines in the next like couple weeks or 2 weeks, that I will hopefully be there maybe within 2 weeks to be able to start the process of being able to try to connect with people on the ground, to be able to also develop virtual assistants for virtual tasks, and start to develop powered by brands by certain people that are able to power them, and start to develop different powered by processes and such things, just like LVMH does, where they're able to pipeline different processes, and also like ghost kitchens are able to make different restaurants within a specific organization. It's things like that, but then we're trying to maybe multiply and make like multiple manufacturing of like jewelry brands, for example, different jewelry brands under one umbrella, for example, and or like I talked about making car rims in the past, developing car rims, car wheels, or processes to 3D print and develop anything that scales up from jewelry up to car rims, for example, and having differing brands, being able to pipe out and develop differing brands with different people that are able to virtually assist me and also physically assist me, but also at the same time be able on the front end to be able to try to get a job in the Philippines, to be able to maybe conceivably use all my time on the upfront sense, to be able to transition time and the upfront time that I'd be spending about 8 hours a day on, to be able to just try to transition that into dollars and cents, so that those dollars and cents can be directly benefited in transitioning and directly corresponding to the continuous and ongoing cycle and cyclical development of continuous ongoing transitioning into monetary, into philanthropy energy. Monetary into philanthropy energy is we continue to try to develop and build the global philanthropy energy grid. The global philanthropy energy grid, where we're trying to transition all monetary energy into philanthropy energy. And so this would be somewhat of a process that would help with that process to be able to try to align with time, to where if I can find a company that has to do with this country, with the U.S., for example, for now, and to then be able to go over there and be able to try to help that country, the company in that country of the Philippines, and within the next 2 weeks I will try to go there. I will just try to call it out to be able to try to start to activate some of the things we've been talking about more so on this podcast that are more so difficult to activate within this country. And so we've been talking about going to Asia in the meantime, but we just don't have a plane ticket in the meantime. So we're just trying to ambitiously talk about doing this to be able to connect with the virtual assistance that's out there, well, that is virtual in the meantime, but also in a physical sense, be able to try to connect that virtual somewhat assistance that is available out there from this present time now, and connect it with the physical sense, so we connect the physical with the digital sense of the presence and the assistance, hopefully to be able to full circle cycle some powered by brands, and have other assistants in this fashion be able to help power this process where we're processing different brand development initial powering processes that are powered by people that are in this land that hopefully already are familiar with helping other people in a virtual assistant sense, but in a physical sense, to be able to physically be there and physically assist with the virtual assistants would be the ideal of fashion, to be able to complete the circle and the cycle, to be able to continue to make other business circles and cycles, to be able to spin with other vendors and other people to connect and continually try to expand upon a network that is in a physical and a digital sense, expanding in a sense of trying to develop more people and also business energy and businesses and brands and brand developments, and using the scalability of the ability to scale by leveraging AI and replication branding, replication scaling, replication modeling of replicating, continuous ongoing replication processes that can be scaled in a process that has the ability to leverage AI in differing directions of scale elements and try to practice different scale elements to be able to find sweet spots with actually practicing an actual application and actual action by being able to connect virtual assistants with physical assistants, and physically assist virtual assistants by virtually flying over there and being physically present to be able to try to connect with an American or a U.S. company to begin with, and be able to try to work for that company on the front end and be able to reinvest some gains from that company process of assisting in a U.S. company in that region of the world, to then be able to transfer those assets and some rewards from working for those type of brands, to then be able to start to invest that monetary energy to be able to transition it into philanthropy energy, and also try to scale as much virtual assistance in a physical sense as possibly possible, to be able to get more people to help to sell things online, to be able to start to employ people a bit at a time and recycle and resurface the value back into the local ecosystem, back into the Philippine area, if possible, by being present and staying there, conceivably for an unforeseen time, conceivably if it's possible to develop a work relationship, conceivably if there's all these unknowns, conceivably if it's possible to facilitate a physical facilitation of the process, to be able to close the gap from this space to there, and within the next 2 weeks especially, It's a large order, it's a tall order. Projecting something like this is not necessarily likely something that will be followed through with, but in terms of the essence of trying to make a bet, in terms of taking the action and putting down the action on the table, in terms of developing the action, whereby if I am able to land the job, that I will take it. The committing to action necessarily spoken about within this podcast is if I am able to get the job or any given job in the Philippines from a U.S. company in the next 2 weeks, that I will take it, that I will be flying there within the next 2 weeks, and this is a podcast that is able to just sort of quantify and be able to, in essence, just acknowledge and be able to put down the committing to action, acknowledgement, mention, thought process, expression expressed in this podcast, while we're focusing on finishing through with the rest of this podcast to just get into the next day, which is tomorrow, starting sometime soon. So we can try to facilitate the action that is being spoken about and making a bet into facilitating that action to try to follow through with what we're talking about doing, which is, in essence, moving within a very short time, which is the next 2 weeks, which would be a very ambitious plan to be able to try to close that gap and physically connect with virtual assistants, if possible, because we want virtual and physical assistants, and both of those things are very much idealized in terms of aligning with both of those processes to be able to try to continue to develop more of an ongoing, unfolding energy while we work with the U.S. from an external country, from an external space, an external country, an external place, and then therefore be able to try to develop world energy, global energy from this place out in the region, which I've mentioned a couple times now, out in the Asian section of where people are, to be able to go meet them there and be able to stay there and try to start to develop roots in that part of the world, and then develop a worldwide brand from there, hopefully develop a worldwide brand from there, hopefully start to develop a worldwide brand from there, hopefully start to develop a worldwide brand from there. Alright, thanks again for now. Bye, Dinky Tech, bye, peace, bye. Dinky Tech, change for games, Dinky Tech, change for game studios, bye. Peace, bye.